So I talked about possibilities, and our brain is given to us to work things out. And through our free will, we're capable of turning this instrument into an amazing instrument to help us in whatever areas we want. We can use it to send people to the moon, to rovers on Mars, to look at the composition of minerals, to ascertain the nature of time and space. You can also use that very same instrument to solve the main problem, that is to recognize your nature. And that is done through Jiva Srishti, through, in summary, free will, ability to choose. And there's a nice story in the Ramayana of how Valmiki became Valmiki. And there was a man called Ratnakar who was looting villagers in the village or in the forest. So he was going through the forest, waiting for villagers to pass through the forest, and he would stop them and he would say, "Give me all your possessions or else." So this is how he made his living. And it was a quick way to earn money. He was quite okay with it. It didn't involve a lot of work or at all. It was just very easy. Until one day, Narada was walking in the forest, and he stopped Narada also. And Narada is the wise person. So he says, "Give me your possessions." And Narada, being Narada, questioned him and says, "So is this what you do, right? This is your occupation?" "Yes, it is." "And so is this what other people in your village do? They also loot people for money?" No, they don't." "So then why are you doing it?" "Oh, because it's the easiest way to make money. It's just take from other people." And Narada said, "But you do understand there are consequences, right?" And he says, yeah, but see, I'm doing this for my wife and kids, so I'm doing good." And Narada then said, "Well, have you actually asked whether, because you know that this is papam, what you're doing?" "Yeah, of course I know, but I'm doing it for my wife and kids." "Well, then if it's papam for you, then are your wife and kids willing to share this papam with you?" "Of course they are. They love me." So he says, "Well, why don't you go back to them, and if they agree, then I will give you my possessions. Until then, just go back and ask them." And so Ratnakar goes back and asks his wife, "Hey, so you do recognize what I do, right? I loot people." "Yes." "And are you willing to share the papam consequences that I incur?" Wife says, "Absolutely not. That is your thing. You choose to make money like that. We're your family. There are other husbands also who are doing good things. What you do is your thing. We're just being your wife and kids. That much is enough. We want your possessions, but we don't want your papam." So Ratnakara was hurt by this. So he goes to the kid and says, "Are you willing to share my papam?" "No, sorry, Dad. I don't want bad consequences on my account for your actions. You are my father, but I'm not willing to have any bad consequences." So Ratnakar was shocked by this. And so he went back to Narada and was disappointed and was at a loss. He said, "I don't know now what to do. I thought my family believed in me, they trusted me, and they're not willing to go ahead with me on this journey of life. They want what I give them, but they don't want my papam." So he was very disappointed. So Narada told him, "Okay, just sit down, and here's a japa, and repeat Rama, 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 over and over and over again. And slowly, slowly you will relinquish these unhelpful samskaras from your body and become a good, discerning human being." So Valmiki, not yet Valmiki, Ratnakara sat down and he started to meditate. Now somehow, because this is a story, an anthill developed around him. Now in real life, is this going to happen? An anthill is going to develop around you? In real life, ants will bite you constantly. So it's a story. So an anthill started to develop, and it was, I guess, protecting him somehow because he was chanting. So one day, Narada came back to visit how he was. and he saw this huge anthill, and I guess he kicked it, and the anthill, which in Sanskrit is called Vaumika, Vaumika, and he kicked it, and he saw Ratnakar inside, transformed, you know, almost just completely transformed through this mantra, and he gave him, Narada gave him a name, Valmiki, and thereby he, through that transformation, that metaphorical transformation, it's not just japa, you don't get transformed through japa, but through metaphorical transformation, became this wise person who then wrote the Ramayana and became one of the most popular people of our time. Yes? So see, if they knew that he was doing something fishy, and they choose not to do anything about it, they can say something. In that sense, they've done all they could. But Ratnakar may choose not to participate. So in that sense, they've done the right part. But if they encourage him and say, no, go ahead, do it. We want you to do this. Then that's a whole different kind of consequence onto them. But they didn't do that. They knew what he was doing. They didn't like it, and they were not willing to share the consequences. And at the same time, they were his family. They want to survive, so they need some food and some money also. So it changes. It depends on whether you are helping the person actively and participating, what do they call it, partner in crime. Being a partner in crime, or saying, hey, I love you, but this is what you're doing is not good. I will stay with you and support you and do my part. I just let you know I don't support your looting at all. In that sense, you are, getting a lot less papam on you, because in some sense, right, behind the scenes, you're still sort of staying, and you're in that sense indirectly contributing. You can also say, look, if you don't stop, I will leave. Then that's going to have a whole different set of consequences on that person, because you're making that bold statement. If you don't stop this, I will leave. But it's tricky, isn't it? Because the wife and kids, and Indian times, you don't just marry off someone else. So we want to show the complexities of punya papam. It's not black or white. Just simply leave. What if I can't? And some people, like Ratnakar, even in the modern world, they start off by cheating, dishonest practices, and very quickly they acquire funds, money, and now through that money they just change. They're able to understand, hey, I don't need to cheat anymore. I've established myself in the world enough, and I can now start to give back. It's amazing. They had to cheat one part to be able to give back to the world, and now they're able to give and give and give and give. So can you now categorically dismiss the person as bad? We look at it like that. Oh, you're a bad person. But you look at their whole track record. Inevitably, they're providing a lot of funding and help and support and charity to other people indirectly through their transactions. Total shift. So now, can I call that initial thing of looting, can I call it bad? See, so when we play with these categories, good, bad, we limit our understanding of things, how they work. So the story shows us that whether the person is born in a privileged background or an unprivileged background, no matter what position in society they're from, Shudra, Vaishya, Brahmana, Kshatriya, no matter what position, you can change your life around. And the past doesn't matter. All that matters is where you're going. The past does not matter. All that matters is where am I going. That where am I going, that is Jiva Srishti, capacity to exercise my discipline to do what is to be done, and following through until that next stage of life is yours. You now claim it. It is yours. You have done it. And then now we can share back into the world. So any hard work done in this world, inevitably it starts to reverse the roles and it starts to come back into the world. That's how the system is made up. And if the person holds it to themselves, then as I said, through Tao Te Ching, there's a certain law that cuts off, finds a way, and things get lost. I know a friend of mine who was extremely wealthy, and they had all their eggs in one basket, as they say. You know, on an investment, invested to a stockbroker. It's called a managed fund, and they manage your funds. And the stockbroker made some mistakes, and all of the 10 people who invested lost money. So he lost basically 90% of his income, 90% of his life savings, because his eggs were in one basket. So life is made in such a way that if I don't use my discernment and distribute the risks, then one can collapse your whole life. Okay, so this means that all of this distribution and thinking and choice is a product of Jiva Srishti, your own discernment. Therefore, we distribute our eggs in different baskets. Therefore, if one basket is down, I am still fine. That requires effort. It's very easy to put it all in one, suppose, bank account and then depend on that. And yet, by having this dispersion throughout, you are working with the laws. You're reducing the risks like this. So in this sense, Valmiki was, reducing the risk of further and further acquiring papam. He recognized there's a consequence. My wife and children who I cared about don't really want that. So I must be doing something wrong, because if I was doing something right, they would have agreed, but they don't agree with that. So every moment we're given this opportunity to revise what we are doing. Okay? Then verse 45. Delusion causes Brahman to appear as Jiva. Sthanao Purushavat Brantya Krita Brahmani Jivata. Jivasya tatvike rupe tasmin drashte nivartate. So the main part here is tree is taken for a thief, just as Jiva is taken for Brahman. So what is a Jiva? We said Jiva is made of 3 bodies, and they are physical, subtle, and causal bodies. And why are they here? Why does Brahman why does self as though have these bodies? Because of avidya. Avidya. And what does this avidya produce? It produces the 3 bodies. So I see myself as good as the 3 bodies. I was never the 3 bodies. I was always Brahman all along. But due to ignorance, I saw me, the body mind, and assumed I was good as that. Thereby, life then was played along according to my understanding of myself as a doer, as an enjoyer. And what caused this ignorance? Was it something that you selected? It's beginningless. Why is it beginningless?
It's before time.
Yeah, okay. So you can't say that ignorance began, I think that's what you want to say, because that means it began in time. But Ishvara is the truth of time and space. So we cannot say that there was time and suddenly there was no ignorance and it began suddenly one moment. That means before ignorance, since it came in time, was absence of ignorance. But you cannot have ignorance come out of absence of ignorance. Absence of ignorance means knowledge. In other words, I cannot suddenly not know. I know everything, and suddenly I don't know. That's not possible. The second reason why ignorance is beginningless is because ignorance is avarana shakti, which is Ishvara's design. Avarana shakti is not intending to make us ignorant. It is just a power that's able to divide and create differences, colors and tastes and sounds. So you have to hide one to create the other. You have to hide blue to show red. You have to hide red to show yellow. You have to hide information from a pear tree to manifest an apple tree. This hiding creates duality. It creates division. But the moment this avarana shakti pervades our brains, pervades our minds, then it manifests as I don't know. What don't I know? I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. I don't know basic things like walking. Therefore, Avarana Shakti, because of that, there is ignorance. But you cannot call Avarana Shakti ignorance. You understand? Because we tend to call Maya ignorance. I don't know why they say this sometimes. Maya is ignorance. Beautiful ignorance. Maya is intelligence. All knowledge, all power is Maya. How can you now say Maya is ignorance? If Maya was ignorance, then since everything, this knowledge comes from Maya, then how can I now trust this knowledge since Maya is also ignorant? Therefore, this thing of Maya being ignorance, out the window. Maya is all knowledge, all power. Sarvajna, Sarva Shakti. From all knowledge, all power, two powers arise. Vikshepa Shakti, Avarana Shakti. Vikshepa Shakti projects names and forms. Avarana Shakti hides. It hides one projection to display another projection. Just like your brain has the capacity to project a dream, and it has the capacity to hide information to create differences in the dream. Just how your own mind has that capacity of Vikshepa Shakti, projecting, Avarana Shakti, veiling, the total equally has that kind of power at the level of macrocosm. And because of these two powers, you and I are here. And thereby we look at ourselves and we see ourselves as one of the many. Just like in the dream, you look around and you see yourself as one of the many. And yet the whole thing, the whole dream, the substance of the dream is made out of your own, out of you, essentially. Therefore, there's no difference between me, the many, the subject, and the object. But when this Avarana Shakti projects outwards, it creates subject-object. In fact, it only creates a subject because there is a conscious jiva. If the jiva didn't arise, there will be no subject. There would just be objects. So because we have subject-object, we need a pramana to recognize what is the connection between them and what is their truth. What do they resolve into? That's why we have all these prakriyas. It's not like there's such thing as called dragdarsha viveka, satya mithya. There's not even Brahman. Brahman is just a provisional name to help you point to the ultimate reality. You see, all these names we create, consciousness, Brahman, Ishvara, Maya, Avarana Shakti, none of this actually exists. It's just concepts that we use to help this another concept called the brain understand that all that is here is just concepts manifesting as forms, which are nothing but concepts, and the truth of those forms is one reality which you are. That reality happens to be the only thing there is. And thereby you go like, but who am I? That question is answered through the pramana. And the pramana studies the very question, studies the individual, studies the object, and brings it all together. And then you say, wow, how could have I missed something that was so obvious? But it was not so obvious because it was not explicitly pointed out. Until then, it is all one big mystery. Things are like this, things are like that. It just doesn't make sense. And then because we don't have the pramana, we then start to make assumptions and build these schools. These schools of whatever, whatever they do nowadays. Now, Advaita Vedanta cuts through all of that and says, here, let me cut through all this nonsense and point out what is actually true all along. And you happen to be not different from that one reality. Until then, you're not going to settle. You're not going to settle for anything other than total limitlessness, freedom, total freedom. The moment there is one speck, one iota of limiter on me, like a mosquito, we are agitated. We want to get rid of it. One thought that contradicts, that makes me as though limited, I'm not going to stop. That's that's the program inside us. It doesn't stop until every doubt is removed. Crystal clear knowledge. Crystal clear like this. It is always crystal clear. You're already crystal clear like that. But owing to this power, it is as though mixed up with the light. And that light is changing, the upadhi is changing. Even now, this upadhi is listening and this, upadhi is talking. But it's not an upadhi, is it? It's not an upadhi once you recognize that it is only as though. It is only an appearance of the one reality. Just like the dream, the subjects and the objects are as though real. They're not actually real. They're not real because they're changing and they're all resolving into, depending into, or on one conscious being you. In that same way, one conscious being you, right now, resting as yourself, the infinite one, and in you, there is a world, there is this amazing power which is manifesting this right now, and you're experiencing that. In fact, in the presence of you, there is an experience of the mini version of you, the small version of you, the 5 kosha version of you that's going through an experience. But there's an underlying presence through and through all of that. That presence, I am right now, self. Therefore, who is a jiva? The jiva is the one when self, you, as though take yourself as these 3 bodies and thereby go through a life that is consistent with all of that. And what is hidden from the jiva? What is hidden from the jiva? Two things. Ishvara, and the truth of Ishvara is Brahman. Because it's hidden, we speculate. And so we create different systems to try to explain what God is. God is over there. Ishvara and truth of Ishvara is Brahman. That is hidden from the jiva. And that needs an independent means of knowledge called Vedanta. Everything else you can discover through observation, through inference and perception. But when it comes to awareness and Ishvara, that which was before time and space came, you can't use perception and inference because nobody was there looking at what happened. So we have to use a certain model to recognize what was before time and space. And we say there was a cause which was of the nature of intelligence, and we don't make a claim that it was intelligence. We use logic by recognizing the universe as is an intelligent assemblage of forms put together, and everything is connected to everything else. Nothing's out of place. Everything has some function in the universe that helps something else. Therefore, the creator has to have knowledge of all things. Gatasya karta gatanyaha, sarvasya karta sarvanyaha. The pot maker only has knowledge of the pot, but the creator of all things has knowledge of everything. That means from whatever this universe came from, the creator of the universe has to have knowledge of everything. This is independent means of knowledge. Now, upon moksha, what happens to this jiva who took itself as good as the 3 bodies? What happens to self who took itself as good as the 3 bodies? The self remains. These 3 bodies are now known to be as though. Their status changes. Therefore, the person, I'm no longer as good as the person, as good as the 5 sheets. The tvam, the status of being a person, the status of being the 3 bodies, the status of being as good as these 5 sheets, that status collapses through cognitive understanding. I am remains exactly the same, still illumining the mind, who now recognizes its own truth. Before, the mind did not recognize its truth. Now the mind recognizes its truth. Therefore, the jiva does not, hello, welcome. The jiva does not go away. What goes away is tvam, the status of being a jiva. That means I am as good as the jiva. That goes away. Yeah, I can appreciate this body as being a jiva, but I am much bigger than this body and this mind. The word eternal jiva, I think it's used in Tattva Bodha. I actually don't have to get up. Not that the jiva is eternal. The jiva has the capacity to be eternal until I recognize my truth. That means the jiva has the capacity to be born again and again and again. How long? Eternally. But it's not really eternally, because eventually I come to the final truth and I cut that bond. So it has the capacity to, but not actually eternal. Yeah.
And the ignorance causes every new birth.
Correct. And ignorance sustains the jiva. Ignorance sustains the jiva one life after the other. Yeah. And I cut that by removing ignorance with scissors, called pramana. And then the verse uses a metaphor. Atma Bodha is nice because I like it, because it uses these visual examples, something you can concretely grasp. But every example is going to be limited in some way or the other. But this is work by Adi Shankara, and we can see how creative he was, how thoughtful he was to help us out with some concrete example to ascertain the reality, therefore making it much easier for us to relate. And in this verse he says, we don't know the nature of the tree. So the tree trunk at night I see, and it's mistaken for a thief. Has anyone ever had this happen to them? You mistook a tree for a man? I didn't. You did? Right. I don't know. What does a tree?
Once I had that, some branch was happening and I thought someone was sitting.
Okay, maybe that happened. Okay, that now I relate. Okay.
And I was enjoying the full moon while it was a street light.
Okay, now I get it. So naturally, right, it's light, it's not enough light, and the tree's like this, and you're looking from a distance, and it's not a man at all. It's not a thief, it's not a man, it's not a woman, it's got no connection to it. One's a tree, one's a human being. It's two different things, totally. But due to the similarity, potential similarity, the tree will, to the tree's so-called power, it's able to give you this impression of something that you're familiar with. So you impose or impute a notion. And when you shine a torchlight at this tree, then the atyasa, thief, what happens? Disappears. And what remains behind is what was all along. Therefore, at once, my emotion and my impression and my relationship to the tree changes. So as long as I see the tree as a thief, I would have an axe in my hand. And people would say, put the axe down. Why are you afraid of this world? And I say, well, because there are thieves around. There are forces to get me. There are dangerous forces. And so it becomes a burden now to carry all these weapons and, protection like mechanisms. I want to protect myself against the society, and people are going to hurt me, and I have to withdraw, and I'm getting too close to you. Now there's love between us. I have to withdraw because I'll potentially get hurt because I got hurt before. Things like that. So these are all thieves. Thieves stealing the beauty of the tree. Hopefully it's a pleasant tree. And the tree is nice to look at, but I cannot see the beauty of the tree, of the world. I cannot appreciate it because there's a empirical fear, and there is a subjective fear, all working together, churning, because of my own ignorance about the nature of the tree. The moment I gain the fullness, the full nature of the tree, then at once I am at peace with the tree. I can have a proper relationship with it. And we thereby impute different things like modes of happiness, priya, moda, pramoda, a little bit of happiness. You're in a distance. Okay, they're in a distance, that's moda, happiness. Then they're in very close proximity, you get more happiness. That's Priya Moda. That's Moda. So first one is Priya, second is Moda, and now you are at one with the food, it's in your mouth and it's fully being tasted. Now it is maximum happiness. So even happiness is a mode subject to fluctuation and intensity and duration. So in that sense, that too becomes an identity that I take myself as, and then I try to get more of me, which is happiness. Thereby the life becomes a journey of seeking modes of happiness. Priya, Moda, Pramoda. And that too becomes a disappointment, because when we do try to seek this, then we very quickly realize that people don't quite have the same rule sets and expectations as I do. I have one expectation, the other person thinks it's a silly idea, so now there's a conflict there. So in my pursuit to seek for happiness, I end up being relatively disappointed simultaneously. And therefore, the journey of seeking happiness itself becomes a journey, ironically, of suffering. Therefore, we say it is a samsara chakra. Okay, next section, we'll change topic again. Liberated while living and after death. This will be for the next few verses. So knowledge destroys the era of ego. In other words, the era of taking yourself as good as taking that one I to be the only thing there is. Tattva svarupa anubhavat utpanam jnanam anjasa aham mama iti cha ajnanam badhate dik brahma adivat. So knowledge destroys the error of I and mine, the sense of I and sense of mine. Okay. So we said so far that when you remove avidya, the root cause, what is root cause? Root cause that I am much more than these three bodies. So I don't know that. That is avidya. And this avidya produces atyasa. Atyasa is I am as good as the three bodies. Okay, so avidya, I don't know my nature, and not knowing my nature, I recognize this body as me, as I. And the question then is, when you correct and remove avidya and correct this atyasa error, so when you make two corrections, in fact you make only one correction, because what's the cause? What's the cause of atyasa? Yeah, avidya. So you don't have to touch atyasa. Only as far as reducing it so it's not so scary, so at least you can approach the problem. So the question is, what kind of a perception, what happens when I remove avidya? And this will help us to see that when you know the truth of everything, nothing changes. Now, I'm making a statement, but I have to prove it to you, because there's an idea that upon moksha or enlightenment, the world disappears. Everything changes. I'm making a statement, but I have to prove it, and this is what I want to do. When I correct avidya, okay, it leads to two kinds of effects. Sopadika, atyasa, and nirupadika, atyasa. Sopadika, that's basically with sandhi. Saha upadika, and nir without superimposition. I'll explain. So let's take sopadika right now. And when we open our eyes, we see the sun like rising from the east to the west. So sopadika. Okay. So we do see that with our eyes. Our eyes are programmed to recognize this. But in actuality, despite this, literally, like, move your head like this, is the sun actually doing that? No. So this means that you can't just say no, because then it becomes a memorized fact. And we're not interested in the bottom scale of Bloom's taxonomy, memorizing facts. You have to understand and explain why is it then, even after I discover that the sun is not moving from east to west, why do I still see sun moving from east to west? You have to now explain that. How would you explain?
My personal
Yeah, good. So, well, right. So this means that I can't just make a claim. I have to be able to explain why is it even after recognizing that the sun is not moving, I still see the sun as moving. That's called knowledge. Before it's just called a memory you learn in school. So we have sun not moving. And that, what kind of not moving, what is that? What kind of an understanding is that? Cognitive understanding. Is that an emotion?
No.
Cognitive understanding. So what happened initially? I had ignorance of the sun because I thought the sun was moving from east to west. So I had ignorance. Now, when I remove that ignorance, that avidya, has my perception changed? It remains exactly the same. So ignorance crossed out, perception same. And has my conclusion, my cognitive conclusion changed? Yes, my cognitive understanding has changed, right? So maybe I'm using a different word. A conclusion about what's going on has changed, but that's a cognitive process. So I'm going to say here conclusion changes. Okay. So why is it like this? The reason is because you and I didn't create the sun. So whatever we didn't create, when we understand what's really going on, that is at the level of Ishvara Srishti. That means the sun is Ishvara Srishti. So this is at the level of Ishvara Srishti. That means empirical design. Srishti. Okay. Because it's an empirical design, nothing, perception remains the same. But now that I open my eyes, I see exactly the same. What about your eye sense? Is that empirical design? Your sense of eye? Your ahamkara? Careful. No. Your ahamkara, we said 4 functions of the mind. Memory? I didn't create memory. Yes, I did fill up stuff in my memory, but didn't create the concept of memorization and recall. That's empirical. Thinking. Yes, I did fill up my intellect with stuff, but I didn't create the process of thinking. So it's empirical. Ahamkara is also an empirical design. We said 4 functions of the mind. So the sense of I, huh? Yeah. Yeah, ahamkara is Ishvara Srishti. The whole laws, I am big, I am small, that's Jiva Srishti. The whole inferiority complex, that's Jiva Srishti. But ahamkara, even a wise person has ahamkara. They have to operate in this world. So, Ishvara Srishti. So nothing changes when I recognize the nature that my eye sense is nothing but ultimately mithya, and it reduces into satyam. Nothing changes at all. It's the same thing with scientists. The scientist now recognizes the world is atoms, which is Ishvara Srishti. So before I saw a wall, and now I see that it's, cognitively, I see that it's atoms. What happened? Ignorance got removed. It's not a wall. My conclusion has changed about the wall. My cognitive understanding has changed about the wall. But perception is still the wall. Because it is Ishvara's design, not mine. So when I understand that my knower, right, that the knower Andre, knower Daisy, knower, whatever, Tanya, when I understand that knower has a Satya Mithya relationship, It's just like this pot and clay. Nothing really changes. I don't suddenly, perceive myself as some huge, there's no like experiential change at all. Just like there's no experiential change between sun and before and after. But I can still write poetry, can't I? I can still write glories of the sun. The sun rises, and here I witness this majestic beauty flowing across the horizon, going down into the dawn of the mist, surrounded by the great forest of darkness, not knowing from whence it came from. Oh, does the Lord touch my senses, from which I am from, I know not, but I wish to discover, for my heart is yearning for the greatest magic of all, the great magician from whom all of this has arisen from, and the sun is this glorious thing that reminds me of my beauty. How I wish to merge and just dive into this light of beauty. Oh Lord, may you bring me closer to yourself. And the means by which I do that is Vedanta. Okay? So you write poetry. But does that now mean that I'm still really mean that the sun rises and sets? No. So this means I'm much more freer to do as I wish, while still operating in this world like before. Now what about Nirupadika? Nirupadika. Well, this is an example of the thief and the trunk. So Nirupadika. Well, here the thief was my own creation. So that's Jiva Srishti, right? Jiva Srishti. Because it is my own creation, when I remove that, when I shine the light, my ignorance is removed, just like here, ignorance is removed.
Perception also.
Huh?
Perception also.
Yeah, my perception totally changes. In other words, experience changes. Why does experience change? Because the difference between Jiva Srishti, the thief, and the tree, there's no correlation whatsoever. That's why there's such a huge, like, oh my God, I thought you were I thought I was looking at my, boss, who but you're not. Therefore, when I create my own idea, then my ignorance goes, perception experience changes, and conclusion also changes. It's no longer a thief, it is a tree. So now which one is moksha? Is it sopadika or is it nirupadika? Can you tell me why is it sorry, did you say nirupadika?
No, so
Okay, let me challenge us. Suppose we say moksha is nirupadika. What would that entail? That would entail something like that my eye sense was imagined, that my body was imagined, because nirupadika is only pertinent to one mind, not another mind. But have you imagined your body? Have you imagined your eye sense? None of that. As far as nirupadika, I have to remove my inferiority and superiority complexes. That has to be removed to be able to work with the reality. So because your eye sense is nothing but empirical design, which has a satya-mithya relationship, and you come to see that your very eye sense, the truth of it, the content of it, is awareness. Coming to see that cognitively, there can be no experiential change. Just like between the sun rising and setting. Before, it was rising and setting. After, it is rising and setting. Before, there's a sense of I. After, there's a sense of I. But what is the after now that I know? The sense of I is only apparent. For example, before, I was as good as the space. After knowledge takes place, still space is as though confined, but this space is also the total space. I know that cognitively. but I still experience as though confinement. I know cognitively the sun is rising and setting, but still I experience cognitively I know the sun is not rising and setting, but I experience the sun rising and setting. You see? Therefore, whatever is empirical, when you come to recognize it for what it is, when I come to see the I sense for what it is, when I come to see Andre for what it really is, Morita for what it really is, personality for what it really is, it's all empirical. The mind, the ahamkara, no change whatsoever. Therefore, moksha is sopadika atyasa.
Another nice example is about the father and son who look at the mirage. And the father knows when the son gets all excited, finally he's disturbed and
Right.
going into this object.
Right, right.
Because the father keeps his peace.
Yeah, it's good. So, yeah, that's why I'm kind of hesitating to answer this.
The mirage is still, people see the effect is still there. Also the father sees.
Yeah.
The mirage in the desert.
The only thing with that is, yeah, so, okay, good, because that mirage is empirical design. Good. It is an empirical design. It's not imagined. Therefore, he's right. So the sun will run.
Father will also see, but he knows that
Right.
there is no water there.
Yeah, good.
That's why they call sopadika and jhas also.
So it's sopadika. You're right.
So you need knowledge
Yeah,
to see through it.
got it. And this, good, Simon. And even after you recognize, the sun recognizes it is an empirical, it's not actually real. There's no water. Does the sun stop seeing?
No.
He sees exactly the same. But the sun also now doesn't run just like his father because cognitive knowledge has taken place. And we're also spinning around this globe 1,000 kilometers an hour. We don't feel like that. And even if we know that, as we do now, still, everything's fine. Still.
Once we know it.
That's an excellent example. Once you know that you're spinning, you're still as though not spinning at all. Sopadika. So this means the world is never going to disappear because it's not my creation. The I sense is not going to disappear because it's not my creation. Andre is not going to disappear because it's not my creation. I was never Andre to begin with. Nothing's going to disappear because it's not my creation. As far as things disappearing, it can only be your own personal stuff. And that has to be addressed. That's basically tapas that we talked about in verse 1. That's what reduces the subjectivities. Everything else remains exactly the same. This makes us rational. This makes us be in the world. This makes us be a normal person. No need to jump up and down. Everything's the same. Your personality remains the same. How you are, you don't have to now pretend, like, oh, I figured out, now I'm free, just to show you. No, because it's sopadikatyasa. That means one becomes very normal, which is healthy. It's incredible. Okay, before we close, I'm going to ask us some questions. Ready to answer? Okay. And then after we close, you will have questions of your own. So if awareness is self-evident, why do we miss it? How about I just show you one example? Why do we, if it's evident, why do we miss awareness? Upadi. So we mix up and take the upadi mixed up with upahita. Therefore, we always attribute I to the changes. That's why we always see I'm changing, I'm changing, I'm changing, I'm changing. That's because it is a mixed up superimposition mix-up.
And also it's the closest to the ahamkara.
And the closest towards the ahamkara, yes. So naturally you would take this knower to be as good as I, because it lasts for like hours during the waking state. So you would take it as that's who I am. If awareness is evident, this is example number 2. If awareness is evident, why do we miss it? Here's another hint.
I think we see clearly in the form.
Because of the name and form.
Because of the name and form imputed and given reality to, missing out on the content. Why else?
I think because the world uitgesproken tells me that it is forms.
Good. More. Why else did you miss it?
Because I not identify with the body.
I like this. Make it personal. Speak to me, Barnable.
Conditioned since we were born. Our mind is conditioned to say this is me.
But even when I'm looking everywhere left and right,
Yeah.
the right information is not there. With my senses, I can't, even with the right brain, you can't figure it out.
Excellent.
Constant changes in my mind and around me confuses me. It's clear.
Good. Good.
The projection and the veiling Shakti, there's a projection there's a veiling of ignorance. That's right.
Yeah, ignorance has veiled. Yeah.
I kept identifying myself as Ahamkar with my own ego.
If I was awareness all along, why did I take myself as good as this person? More answers.
I think I know I'm a person, so why question that?
Yeah, I was a person. Why question that?
Because
That-
I saw so much duality everywhere.
Yeah.
Felt limited every time, confined to
Because I felt so insecure and small.
Yeah. And I was too busy trying to make myself big. Yeah. So this means that every knowledge, what does every knowledge do to the knower? To the ego? What does Vedanta do to the ego? Does it make smaller or bigger? No. Objectivity. Neither. It sees the truth of it. We're not making anything smaller or bigger because it's so padika. You don't touch the sun. It's Vastu Tantra. I have to understand it for what it is. I see the truth of this knower is Satyam, known to me as amness. But there's something also that's changing. That's the knower, doer, experiencer. 2 times, there's 2 things going on. One of them, there's a changing. We all recognize the changes. We all recognize changes are going on. But for changes to be recognized, there has to be an unchanging substratum. It's just logic. To recognize that I'm moving in a train, I have to be, looking at a static surface to know that I'm going. So the fact that there's constant recognition of change in our experience gives away there is the presence of a non-changing substratum adhisthana. How to distinguish I sense from awareness? Next question.
I sense is changing and awareness is not.
What are the 3 roles that the I sense changes? Excellent. Can you give me an example of doer, knower, and experience in your own life? When is your I sense being one of these 3? Give me an example.
Now I am a knower.
Right now, your I sense is a knower.
And enjoy it.
Right now, your I sense is an enjoyer and a knower, of course.
While taking food, I am an experiencer.
When food is being taken by the body, then the I sense claims that and says, I am eating, I am enjoying. Good. How will you recognize awareness? How is awareness recognized?
as the underlying substratum.
Huh?
As the underlying substratum.
As the underlying substratum, we need a pramana for that. What does the pramana include? 3 components. Pramana means a means of knowledge. That means the delivery by which we come to know this. It includes 3 parts. What is Shravanam? Not just listening, but commitment to understand. Tatparya Nishchaya. Mananam, which is? And removing those, reconciling my old stuff with what the scriptures are saying.
Exposing your ignorance to
Exposing, excellent. Excellent. Being vulnerable enough to, because it also helps other students. We think, oh, it's just there's unconscious, everyone else also may have that.
And in that we have to
Reflecting.
trust. We have to trust without knowing it yet.
You have to have a certain amount of shraddha, a certain amount of trust that this is, we're not here to joke around, I'm not here to waste your time. I want change, positive transformation. We're coming here for some transformation. So shraddha, you trust the teacher, trust the pramana, trust yourself. I'm worthy, I can figure this out. Not just the teacher and the pramana, yourself first. Do I believe in myself that I can figure this out? Nididhyasanam, contemplation. When? With open eyes, closed eyes, or both? Both. Whenever you have the time. Okay? What happens when knowledge takes place? What happens to my perception about this person, about the world?
Perception is same.
Remains different? The same? Good. Good. Why the same? Why not different? Huh?
Empirically,
Okay. What's empirical? What has been figured out? The world. Have I created the world? No. What has been figured out? The nature of the individual. Have I created this individual? No. Just open eyes and goes, meh, mommy, right? The body came. Therefore, it is all soparikatyasa. Good. Well done. You've passed the test.
Good teacher.
Ah. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.